Ready? So today I'm kicking off a new type of video where I want to speak to somebody that's a bit more interesting than me, talk about finance, business, entrepreneurial spirit and whatever else we might get to. So I'd like to welcome Lydia to the channel.
Hello, hey Tom.
So shall we set the scene, Lyd, on how we know each other before we start? You can explain our past.
Sure thing. So it's actually part of my story really that I am proudly a failed musician. Tom and I were in a band together for many years. We toured, we slept in the back of a Ford Transit van with other people present. And it's actually it's a source of great joy for me that we still get to support each other and be involved in each other's new ventures like this. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. I think, so the people that tend to watch this channel are interested in finances, investing, making better decisions with their money and things like that. So I think, being an entrepreneur really ties into all of those things. So I just really wanted to learn a little bit more about your journey and find out where you're at.
Sure. So I run, at the moment, 2 cafes with a real focus on specialty coffee, brunch, lunch, cakes, pastries, everything homemade in-house. And as we speak right now, we are also refurbing and building site number 3, which is also going to see us move into the B2B wholesale market. We have a real focus on quality. That's the thing. What's really important to us is that not only do you get a fantastic coffee and a fantastic bit of food, but also great customer service. And it sounds really simple, and it is. You just got to work on those things and those values every day.
So how long have these businesses been in existence?
So Warwick Street Kitchen is the flagship in Leamington, and that's been open since July 2017.
Okay.
St Kitchen in Birmingham was right at the end of 2019. And then we picked up the keys to number 3 back at the beginning of December 2021.
So exciting times then, number 3 right now.
Yeah, it's exciting and it's a lot. It's the biggest project I've personally taken on. It's the first time where the building has been completely empty and we've had to build everything from scratch.
Okay.
A complete shell of a project.
So we'll leave links to all of these places for the video. So how is business then? COVID-19, hospitality, just talk me through what that meant.
Sure. I mean, overall, I'm super proud of us and what we've achieved. The way that we conducted ourselves through the pandemic. I mean, I'm proud anyway that we're in a position where we managed to expand to 2 businesses within 2 years. But then to still be on that upward trajectory through the pandemic and now be in a position where we're expanding again, I could get emotional talking about that. I kind of get goosebumps sometimes.
Don't cry.
But so all in all, I'd say business is good. We last year through the pandemic, we only just missed our revenue target. So, and it goes to show for me how brute hard work, determination, and staying true to your values works. We say things like, build it and they will come. And by that, we mean people want to spend their hard-earned cash on good quality stuff and feel like they're investing in something special. So we just focus on the latter, being something special. So
you must feel then, if you could get through COVID, then you can kind of tackle anything, right?
Bulletproof, sure. I mean, it's something that I can draw on that in lower moments or lower energy moments, and it certainly makes you feel that way sometimes. This too shall pass.
So what were you doing immediately before this? So before you opened up the first place, what were you doing? Where were you working? What was happening? So
immediately before, I was working for somebody else in a similar industry, in a similar specialty coffee brunch scene. I'd been doing that for 4 years. It depends how far back you want to go, really, because I had left a pretty corporate setting that I'd hated and hadn't suited me.
You can say what that was. Tell them what world that was.
I was in recruitment. I was recruiting into the education sector, which, that kind of, it wasn't for me. Like I say, it really didn't suit me, that kind of monotony. And I left that with nothing to go to. And I said to my partner at the time, now husband, I'm never going to work for anyone ever again. And I actually went off to make cakes for people, birthday cakes and that kind of thing. But needed something to kind of cover the bills. So ended up, maybe sort of mid-20s, just washing up on Saturdays in a coffee shop. And actually just realised there was a eureka moment of, I'm built for this. I'm actually good at this. And there's a lot of pride in that. And therefore started, building the idea of, no, this is my career, let's go with this.
So can you pinpoint the moment where you actually sat there one day, you're at work, and you think, do you know what? I could do this for myself. Was there a moment?
Yeah, there was kind of two. So the one, like I said, was even before I worked. I said, I'm not going to work for anybody else ever again. I'm just going to work for me. And then evidently did end up going back and working for someone else for a while, which is a testament, I think, to that business owner and how she managed me and how she let me roll with that I managed to work for her for several years. She really gave me a lot of room to grow and make mistakes and learn a lot about this industry. But then there was more of a gradual realization when I was having meetings with her and she was praising me and telling me how well I was doing, and I was thinking, I have some ideas here about making something really special. And so it was probably beginning of 2017 where I really started thinking, okay, let's start looking for places and taking the next steps.
Okay, so once you've made that decision, what are the practical next steps there? So where do you start? So you've got this grand idea, you know you want to do things for yourself. What are the practical first steps? I mean, a business plan, how do you begin to think about the numbers, practically speaking, what are the first steps?
So it's interesting that you mentioned business plan there, because it's something that because I get asked quite a lot. It's one of those things that people say, oh, I'd love to run a cafe. And I do get asked quite a lot, how do I do it? Can I pick your brain? That kind of thing. And the first thing I say to them is, write a business plan. Because for anybody, especially in this industry, that might seem a bit of a scary task if you've never done it before, especially that second section of a business plan that's really figures focused. I'm not a figures on paper kind of person. That's not my deal. So it was really daunting, but it's such a useful task to really get into the nitty gritty of your business, how it's going to work, and playing that forward. And also because estate agents and banks and landlords, they're going to want to see that if you're a complete startup business. So you need to have it, you need to be prepared.
Had you written one before?
Never.
So how did you go about starting that then?
I was too shy to ask for help. And it's something that I say to people, we don't talk about it enough. There aren't enough resources. So I got a template online of a restaurant, I think it was in America, it was all in dollars and stuff, and I just used that as, okay, here's the market research section, let's go do some of that. Here's the facts and figures, and it took me a while to even just get up the gumption to do that, because that really did daunt me. So yeah, the internet's a wonderful thing.
And so they're pretty big numbers as well, right? If you're not used to the idea of a startup, when you start, I imagine, putting those numbers down, you start to realise that these are serious numbers, right? Yeah. Is that frightening?
I think because I'd worked for a business that did something similar, I knew it was achievable. I was very involved in that business and the way it ran. So I did manage to go into it pretty eyes open of, in order to do this, and not just tick over to actually make money, we're going to have to look at some serious numbers here. So I wouldn't say it was daunting. I went into it with a realistic idea of what we needed to do.
Let's talk finances a little bit then. So how do you begin to try and work out, how much money do I need to get from where I am to start this thing? How much money do I need? So for anybody out there that's thinking of doing something similar, and I guess every business is so different, so it's hard to say, there's not a model of a particular number gets you there. But how do you begin to even put a number to it? Because you need some kind of number, right, to know what you're aiming for. So where did you start? How did that work? Did you get advice?
Ultimately, I'd learned some stuff from the business owner and from the business I'd worked in. But I would encourage people to do a big reverse engineer of that situation. You've written your business plan, right? And there's going to be some fundamental non-negotiables. And for me, it was things like location. I knew I wanted maybe I couldn't afford the high street, but I know I wanted the one just off the high street. Yep. And I needed access for deliveries and things like that. So that puts you in a certain rent category bracket.
So those are really practical things, actually, aren't they? They're practical. Things like, deliveries. That's a really logistical, practical thing.
It's boring saying, now we want rear access. Whereas previous I was just worried about...
I feel like there's a blooper in there about rear access, so we might cut that one in.
Oh, Thomas. So there are things you can put on that list, the practicalities, the rent, the refurb costs, the legal costs, accountancy, your machinery. You can think about all of that. You can get these quotes online. Yeah. That's the stuff that's easy to find out. There's the stuff that's not so easy, or the stuff that took me by surprise. Council tax rates. I naively hadn't even realised that was a thing. Licenses, planning permission if you need to make changes to a building, that then involves an architect, and that's maybe 30% that you haven't even thought of. And then your opening stock. You won't be able to get accounts with people because you're a brand new business. So you have to cash pay up front for all of your opening stock. So there were definitely things that took me by surprise. So anybody who wants to figure out what's my figure, find out what your business non-negotiables are. You can find out the figures from that relatively easily, and then factor in the other stuff that you maybe haven't thought of. And really the only way you're going to do it is to have the balls to go and ask somebody who's already done it. Or there are a lot more resources now, YouTube videos and blogs, that there weren't when I did this 5 years ago. So, and then even so, a wise person would still factor in another 10% buffer.
Well, that was sort of going to be my next question. So how right or wrong were you? So you've got that plan, you've got a rough handle on the number, you then execute it. Looking back now, a few years on, how right or wrong were you?
So the first one, Warwick Street Kitchen, I was about 10% out. Which,
that doesn't feel too bad.
Cool. Saint, we were 5%. We got it really, I really learned a lot. I took it on board. But then this new one, thanks to, I mean, we've got the double whammy of Brexit, the pandemic, these financial realities that have made had a big effect on every industry. But all of our equipment and machinery has become 30% more expensive overnight. It's harder to get in, it's harder to import in. All of our stock has gone up in cost. So I have been as wildly out as 30% on some occasions.
Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? That actually, as
worse.
you get more experience, it doesn't necessarily get easier, or you get better, for whatever that means.
I think you're just not as daunted by those things anymore.
Yeah.
Back on day one, when I realised I was 10% out, I went into a bit of a meltdown. It was like the worst thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
But then so many things have happened since the pandemic. So many things have gone wrong that you've built up this resilience and this idea of this too shall pass, and you just can deal with it in a much better way. And now it's just like, okay, cool, we'll deal with it.
There's this mantra that, you know, without getting too cheesy, that something that always stuck with me, and I know you're into this kind of stuff as well, which we'll talk about. Tough times don't last, tough people do. Which is kind of this, it is really cheesy, but actually I do like it, you know, because it's true. You know, and as you look forward now for the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years, 30, however long that you do this, there are going to be plenty of other occasions. I mean, COVID feels pretty unique, doesn't it? That sort of feels like a once in a lifetime event that we'll be telling, you know, generations about. But that's not to say that there's not going to be many other things like that provide a massive challenge. So you must feel pretty bulletproof, whatever that means, right?
Totally. I mean, we'd had a couple of things happen previous which almost prepared us for the pandemic as well, where like within 2 years of opening Warwick Street Kitchen, no, it was maybe within a year and a half, we'd had this catastrophic flood where actually the kitchen was condemned and we couldn't use it and we had to completely rebuild and refurb it. And at the time, I felt like, well, this is it, this is over. I couldn't even foresee how we could get through this. And I actually wrote, I don't really write a lot of journal entries and stuff, but I wrote a journal entry at my lowest point as an exercise to future Lydia. Of in 6 months' time, this will be over and I'll have dealt with it. So next time something big comes up, we can go back and read that and remind Lydia that she's felt like this before and she's got through. I taught myself in the third person is really weird. I don't normally do that. It just happens.
Have you been in Reddit since?
But I have been in Reddit since. I read it because I was asked to do a talk on resilience with some school leavers, and I actually shared it with them. I read that journal entry to them, and it went down really well, actually. I mean, I swore a few times in it as well, and that always goes down well with the kids, doesn't it?
Yeah, they love that.
I'm one of the cool ones.
So, cast your mind back for me, first few months. So you've done your business plan, the shop's open, that must have been mega exciting to actually see the doors open and this is actually your place and so on. So in those first few months, what were, you know, the practical challenges, things you hadn't thought of? And I guess you were working crazy hours and stuff. So what were the initial challenges that you faced in those first few months?
So there are two practical challenges that spring to mind. One is the team and staffing. I would say that we as a business have got really good at recruiting now, but back then it was often very reactive recruitment. Okay. Like, oh, we need somebody now, so let's just hire the first person. And it always backfired. They always let us down. So myself and the exec chef of the business, who's now my business partner, George, we pulled some serious hours, like to make it happen, to keep the business open. Both of us on our last legs at points, you know, and we didn't even know each other that well back then either. So, you know, now we can recognise red flags in each other and support it, but maybe at the time we weren't so good at that. But also, the other practical challenge is that Warwick Street Kitchen was a bit of a bargain because it was just this old, unloved building, this run-down business. And she's 160 years old, that building, and it is beautiful. We love her for it. But she breaks, man, all the time. I mentioned the floods, loads of machinery broke. We had so many things that went wrong. which you have to, all of a sudden, I mean, I've become quite handy. I can fix quite a few things, and I am very lucky that I have a pretty good support network of people around me that can fix things. But I hadn't factored that in at all. But then the other not so practical challenge is about personal energy levels and motivation and ability to motivate the team when you're super tired, like I just said, and you've done all the hours. Still bucking yourself up and being like the inspiring leader, that's, I would say, hands down to this day, the most challenging thing about running this business.
Is this your first experience then? Was that your first experience managing a team of people?
No, I'd managed people before in previous roles. So I think like the day-to-day team leading or like disciplinaries, training, things like that, I've had experience with. But actually the buck stopping with me and people coming to me for like, there's a problem, we need to fix it. That's the first time I've been like the be all and end all of it.
So practical challenges aside then, one other thing I wanted to touch on is sort of mentally really. We've touched on, the tough times don't last and all that sort of stuff. So how were those first few months sort of mentally? Obviously you've got, I can imagine how exciting it is, but it must be such a mixed bag of emotions, of excitement. You're probably still a bit nervous. You desperately wanted to succeed, and then you've got problems with the team. What about your own mental well-being? How do you keep yourself going?
So I've learned, back then, I can honestly say there were some dark times. And there were things as well that I don't remember happening. Like, George says something to me and I'm like, I just don't remember that happening, but I was just there functioning. And that's a bit scary in itself. Yep. I appreciate that. But you do what you have to do, and ultimately... So George is the exec chef partner? Yeah, exec chef of the business, and he is now my business partner. It became very obvious relatively early on that he was the string to the bow that I don't have. And again, a very hard worker. Something we share is work ethic, I think. So we just gelled together on that. But I have come to recognise red flags in myself. You learn these things about yourself over the years. And there are times where I do a lot of self-reflection at the end of each day. Like, I'll ask myself things like, am I proud of how I conducted myself today? I always ask myself, would I work with me? Because if the answer's no, why would I expect anybody else to work with me? And the answer's not always yes. I'm only human, of course. Like, I'm failing at things all the time. But I will reflect on why, and I will start to notice, like I said, patterns and red flags, and I can start to recognise, okay, I need to do something for me this evening, or I need to get more sleep, or I need to get down the gym. That's like a big outlet for me. It's like another sort of physical, healthy outlet. So I've got better at it, but it's an ongoing process. I've read a lot of books about leading as well and things like that. So being a leader is different to a manager, right? 100%. So that must be... Is that tiring sometimes? There must be days. I mean, I know I get it, and I've only really got myself to motivate in my world. So if you've woken up and it's not a great day or whatever, how do you then inspire people? That must be hard. Okay, so number one, there are days like this, absolutely. But ultimately, I love what I do. So I get and then also the team around me give me energy. If I'm low energy and I go into one of the cafes, I can do a little walk around, chat to everybody, and afterwards I'll feel completely different because they're all just so great. Yeah. But the days were really, really low, challenging days, and I'd say maybe right at the beginning of the pandemic, I can draw on this, that there were times where I'd be walking, because I can walk to St. Kitchen from where I live, and I'd be walking in, and I knew I wasn't ready to go into that shop yet. So I'd take like another lap round St. Paul's Square before I went in, like just psyching myself up, because the guys in that shop are already worried enough. We just said it's unprecedented. We had no idea what was going on, because we were open to takeaway. We opened to takeaway quite quickly. So they're at work, takeaway only, probably worried about their job, worried about their health, worried about their family. I was like, they don't need me coming in with a face on. I need to be the motivation here. So just psyching myself up, giving all my energy to these people because they deserve it. I love these guys. They really deserve every ounce of energy that I have. Another super cheesy tip I have though is I have a playlist of hype songs on my phone. And what's in it? Oh, is it embarrassing? It's a bit embarrassing. Yeah, good. I mean, there's some Britney, sure. Oh God, it is embarrassing. Yeah, yeah. There's a song by Sia called "Never Give Up," which I vibe on all the time. There's some aggro stuff. There's some Thrice, just some riffs that really get me going. It's very confused. Okay. Yeah. Well, a bit like our music taste through the years, been pretty confused.
So what's really interesting, I think, there, you spoke a lot about sort of recognising your own faults. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a question on my list. I'm just sort of thinking it's interesting to hear that so much of your progress is kind of recognising what you're a bit shit at.
Yeah.
And actually your own faults and how you understand how you can flip out of those. And that must have been quite a learning curve, right?
Totally. Especially for me as well. Like, you'll know from experience, I've got a bit of an ego. I like to be the centre of attention. You know,
that's why I asked you to do this.
Totally comfortable in this situation. So kind of getting that in check has been a bit of a personal journey for me, because I can certainly think back on times where I've been a bit like, oh, I can't believe I acted like that. But all in all, it adds to the strength of the business, because I can't be the limiting factor of this business. And if I think I'm the be all and end all and I know everything, I don't know everything, evidently. So you're just going to get to a limit, aren't you, where your business just stops functioning to the best of its ability. So having the ability and the self-awareness to realise your weaknesses actually just enables you to bring people on board who fill those gaps. And then you just become a force to be reckoned with.
So you're sat with shop number 1. At what point do you decide you're ready to go again and open up number 2? Well, what's that moment like?
Still waiting.
Right, okay.
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I would say that I never felt ready to start a business. I never felt ready to open number 2. I still don't feel ready for number 3. But I would say that if you're waiting for the stars to align, for everything to fall into place, and for it to be the perfect moment to take the leap and either be self-employed or start a business or whatever it is you want to do, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Never. There's always going to be something you don't feel ready for. You know, right now, I'd say that our comfort zone as a business, or me and George together, is very much running cafes. We can smash it out in our sleep. So now we're like, okay, let's go wholesale then. Because we're two people that want to push ourselves and we want to scare ourselves almost. You've got to get comfortable in that scared zone. That's what it is.
We don't learn in our comfort zone, is what they say, right?
Absolutely not. And just learn to live in it. Learn to live in the awkwardness and thrive on it a little bit. Like I said, if you're waiting for that perfect moment, you'll be waiting your whole life.
So there's a lot of parallels with that for me. I talk a lot on this channel, about people. A lot of people that watch my videos from a finance point of view, as a financial advisor, they're interested in maybe starting investing and things like that. And this is a topic that comes up time and time again about this perfect moment, the time to invest, And the reality is there is just simply no such thing. And actually more harm is done in most scenarios of people waiting in the wings for this perfect moment to invest as years and months go by. And if they'd have just got on with it and just invested and started the journey rather than waiting for this perfect moment that never arrives. And I think that's the same with almost anything, your decision to start a business, anybody that's thinking of becoming self-employed, whenever, it's always a risk, any of those decisions. And I think you kind of just have to do it.
I think the way I personally deal with that is I think forward to future Lydia, to go into the third person again. How am I going to feel later on, and what am I more likely to regret, having done it or having not done it? I think we all know the answer to that. Yeah,
I think the only certainty is exactly that. I always say this to people. What you do know is if you don't take that shot, you may succeed, you may fail, whatever may happen. The only thing that you definitely know is if you don't try and you're 5 years on, and you start asking yourself the question, I wonder what would have happened if I just tried, then that's got to be much worse than trying and failing miserably and going down in a ball of flames, right?
Preach. You've got stories to tell if you go down in a ball of flames, that's for sure.
Exactly. So just coming back to the whole starting the business thing, final few questions really, just about risk. So it is a risk. You're in a place, you're employed, you've got a regular salary and all of that comes in. So you're now thinking about completely ripping that up to go on your own thing. So there are risks involved with that. And I think what the biggest barrier for most people in either making that leap or not is all about those risks are either too great or you don't understand them properly. So, and I think for me, from somebody, so I know nothing really about the hospitality industry as a whole. What I do know is that every town that you go to is full of different versions of, but lots of coffee shops, cafes, small independent eateries and all that. So it feels like a highly competitive world, I imagine. And then, of course, you've got all the big chains and all the rest of it that you're competing with. So does that worry you? How do you weigh up those risks? And I guess, how do you compete with that? What makes you unique versus I could go somewhere else and go and order the same thing? What's that look like?
We love competition. You've just got to be better. Like, end of, full stop. You've just got to be better. And it pushes us to be better from a personal development point of view. So not just competition in terms of the other businesses, but also when we talk about surrounding yourself with people better than you and the team you cultivate as well. If they're all better than you, that's pushing you to be better on a personal level. And we will just spend time thinking about, okay, here's what the competitors are doing. We don't even really spend time thinking about what the competitors are doing. We're actually, scrap that, just blindsided. This is what we're doing. We believe in it, we're passionate about it, and we just put all of our energy into making that the best possible version of that. So we are just better than the competition. And actually, a customer came into the shop like last year at some point, and he was buying cake and drinking a coffee, and he was like, "Oh my God, is nothing here shit? Like, nothing here shit, is it?" And we quote that because we're like, we've made it. If that's our reputation...
That feels like needs to be in a neon banner across the back.
I was thinking about putting it on staff t-shirts. WSK, nothing here is shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really okay with that if that's the reputation. So we love competition. There is enough business for everyone. People, I mentioned it before, people want to spend their hard-earned cash. They just want to feel like it's on something worth it. So we personally focus our energy on making sure it's worth it.
Right now, what's the biggest challenge from you getting to the next thing? You know, whatever that looks like. What's holding you back now that, you know, you need to solve?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably outsourcing certain things. As in, there's a lot of things that I'm still doing because we've been a relatively small business and we're kind of taking the step into a slightly larger small business. And I will need to free up some of my time. So relinquishing some control to the stuff that I can outsource. It's boring stuff. Sorry to a finance guy, accountancy, bookkeeping, you know.
I agree, it's boring.
Right.
And what's that, a trust issue? What is the challenge of that?
I think before it's been a financial thing, because obviously you're always paying someone else to outsource it. Yes, probably a trust thing. Historically, I've maybe taken longer to outsource even like management responsibilities to people. That's definitely a control thing from my point of view.
It's your baby, right? It's hard. When you've got all the strings and you have to let go of some, and that is tough.
I think that something then that I tell myself is you can outsource loads of stuff and you can't outsource culture. And I would consider a massive part of my job is culture and enforcing that culture, motivating people. I joke that my job title is head cheerleader, you know, and it doesn't really matter who does my bookkeeping.
Yeah.
But it matters who goes in and motivates the team.
That's really, there's again, as a bit of an aside, there's a real parallel to that in sort of the YouTube land where I exist. There comes a point, you know, YouTube is a really unusual world because you have to do all the tasks. So, you know, when I came up with the idea of starting a channel, you know, because I wanted to try and help people from using my professional skills to try and, you know, get to people that otherwise find that difficult to access. What I hadn't really understood was that I would not only be the bloke in the videos, I had to sort of, you know, learn how to do all of that. I had to film them. I had to buy a camera. I've never owned a camera. I had to learn about audio design. And then, of course, you've got to edit the videos together. And then there's a thumbnail. And there's so many bits to it, which I do everything of.
Yeah.
And there becomes a point, and I know I talk to a lot of other people in my sort of YouTube space about this, where you have to start thinking, the only way I can grow this, produce better, more content, is starting to outsource maybe some of those tasks. But I think it's really important to identify the tasks, and it's exactly like you've just said, what involves your personality and what doesn't. So even editing to a degree, there is a personality in the way you want to edit a video and from cuts to one thing, or if there's a joke you want to emphasize or whatever it is. And I think there's a real danger, and I can almost see it in some channels sometimes where you can see where that gets outsourced and you lose a bit of the original personality. So I think that's really interesting that there's that parallel that you're right to a degree, you know, bookkeeping, numbers on a spreadsheet, that doesn't matter if you do that or if Joe Bloggs does that. So I guess you just have to make a list of those tasks and say, what can I get off my plate? Where
do you bring value versus where is there no value in you doing it?
Yeah, interesting. Right, Lyd, I've got one final question for you before I've got a bit of a surprise quickfire round that I'm going to spring on you. So my final question then is, as you sit here today, what would you have done differently? Would you do it all again? What would you have changed?
100% I'd do it again, any day. I love what I do, and I do believe I was built for this. What would I do differently is not, I'm going to cop out, sorry Tom. I think I'm not someone, I reflect a lot on things that we could do better, but I don't sit here and regret, so to speak, or think a lot about things we could have done differently. I think I maybe would have outsourced some stuff sooner, or maybe trusted management sooner. We're getting there, we're getting better at that for sure. But there's no one massive thing where I can say I would have done that in a completely different manner. Because even if it was a mistake, and I can't even think of an example right now, I've certainly learned and become a better business owner from it.
There's some things in life, you have to make those mistakes yourself. It wouldn't matter. So, say if I was involved when you were very, starting, opening up the shops, etc., and say I knew something you didn't, and even if I was able to impart that wisdom on you so you didn't make that mistake, you'd have probably made the mistake anyway or ignored that. Some things you kind of just have to get wrong so that you really learn the lesson properly.
And my personality type, I would have just been like, what the hell does he know anyway?
Yeah.
Please, so and there's a humbling thing there about me self-learning that, but knowing myself, even if you had come in as an expert, I probably would have not reacted too well to it anyway.
Are you ready for a quick fire round then? So I haven't prepped you for any of this.
No.
Right. So we're going to cue some tense music. Okay. Right. So I'm going to call this a quick fire round. You can choose to answer them as quickly or as slowly as you like.
I'm nervous, Tom.
You should be nervous because there's some absolute horrible questions in here. Right, you ready?
You know too much about me for this to be okay.
Right. What coffee do you order?
Oh, that depends.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
On what?
I'm a filter drinker. I really like a black filter coffee, a really interesting black filter coffee, but I'll be the person that will ask, what have you got on filter? What's interesting?
Oh, my, you're that person, aren't you?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, God, I don't want to be behind you in a queue. What the hell is a macchiato?
Double shot of espresso, dash of foam. And if Starbucks tell you anything else, they're full of shit.
Oh, well, there goes my Starbucks sponsorship. Thanks very much. I was hoping they might reach out. Croissant or donut?
Cronut.
What's that?
It's a hybrid.
Is that real?
It's like a donut that's made of a croissant dough and then you fill it with the donut filling.
That's not real.
Sorry to be a smarty pants, but I don't have to choose.
Is that an actual thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
And it's been in, you've done that?
We have done them in the past, yeah. It's not something that's on the menu every day, but...
Weirdest food ever been on your menu?
We served a mackerel donut.
Oh, that sounds revolting.
So we like to push boundaries, right? And this is like when I first met George as well, and it was one of the first menus he put in front of me. And he was doing savoury donuts. So you know how like you get a brioche roll with a burger? So it's a slightly enriched, sweetened burger roll. So he'd then fill it with like a pulled pork one with like an apple slaw. But the one, and that sounds delicious, right?
Sort of.
But the one that really did split people down the middle was a mackerel donut. We really did.
So when you say split people down the middle, some people liked it?
Well, I actually think people were pleasantly surprised. They were like, wow, that was really good. But it was more that people were too scared to order it.
I think they were lying to you. Right, Lyd, I turn up to an interview with you and I am wearing socks with sandals. What do you do?
Hire you on the spot.
Really?
Oh, that takes balls.
That was not the answer I was expecting. Do you like tea?
I have a cupboard full of herbal teas, but I don't go into a shop and get excited about ordering tea.
Do you drink it at home?
Only herbal tea.
Pineapple on pizza?
Hell no.
Really?
Hell no.
See, I really like pineapple on pizza.
Get out.
I feel like the only person that ever fights that.
I know, my bestie likes pineapple on pizza too, and I'm thinking about cutting her out of my life.
So you'll put mackerel
in a donut?
Just be clear.
Yep.
You'll put mackerel on a donut, but no pineapple on pizza. Next question is, do you have to like avocado to be cool?
Yeah.
Because I don't like it.
Well, you're not. We know you're not cool.
But that just feels like this generation is all about avocado.
To be honest, it's probably getting to the point now where you're cool if you don't like it.
Oh right, so it's come full circle.
Yeah, it's gone so mass market that now it's like, no.
Oh, I knew it'd come round to me eventually. I actually just don't like it. Most cliche thing you're sick of people asking you? What, customers? You must get something.
Yeah, probably. Well, not even customers. It's probably just like, oh, I'd love to open a coffee shop. It looks like so much fun. It's not really a question, but I get that a lot.
People say that?
Yeah. I would honestly, I'd be a millionaire if I had like £1 for every time someone was like, oh, it looks like good fun.
Really?
I'd love to do that.
Okay. On a scale of really nice to utterly delicious, how good is McDonald's coffee?
Why is really nice on there?
Because I'm pushing you out of your comfort zone, because I know you hate it.
I don't think I've had one.
Well, how can you say you hate
Actually,
it?
no, like, true story. I just don't like what they stand for and the way that they will use specialty industry in their adverts and like belittle us. Not
Yeah, because their mantra was, why are you paying so much for coffee? I forget what it was.
Yeah,
Something like that,
yeah,
right?
and they just had a whole advert bitching about the little guy. And the actual founder in the story of McDonald's is really interesting. And what they've turned into and now belittling small startup businesses, it kind of grinds my wick a bit.
So, hate.
I've never tried it. It could be awesome.
I actually think I have tried it, and I don't know anything about coffee, but I don't think I enjoyed it.
Well,
I think it was just molten lava hot.
Did you also have it with pineapple on pizza?
Yeah, and a mackerel donut. Last question then. Last one. Who is your favourite YouTuber? And there's a
YouTuber!
And there's a reason I'm asking this.
My favourite YouTuber is Gary Vee.
Oh my goodness me. So you didn't go for me, and you didn't go for your husband, who is behind the camera, who also is a fantastic YouTuber. You went for a completely different person.
I feel like that was the only way to get out of this alive.
Right, great. Lyd, it has been a lot of fun. I've never done an interview before. You are my first person to ever interview, so thank you for entertaining the idea. Can you please tell people where they can find the shops, any links, tell people where to find you?
Totally. So Warwick Street Kitchen is in Leamington. St Kitchen is on St Paul's Square in Birmingham. The third site, which is going to be a bakery cafe, is in Warwick. Please come down and say hey. It would be great to see you. But we're on Instagram, Warwick Street Kitchen, St Kitchen. I'm also on Instagram personally. Hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. My goal here, if there's even one person that's watched this and got some kind of inspiration to just push them to go, do you know what? That moment that you had, I can do this, then that will be my sole goal here. If there's one person, whether it's, I don't care what it is, whether it's, hospitality or whatever. I just think, if there's anything in you that thinks you might be able to do your own thing, then I would absolutely recommend that you should try. I always have so much respect for anyone that's brave enough to go it alone, because my God, it's not easy. We know it's not easy. I've written here, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Cheesy,
yeah.
I know, but yeah. So yeah, thank you again for coming on, and I will see you guys next week.